It's the ESCtips.com Eurovision Preview Podcast. Join us as we sort this year's contenders from the duds.
Attention, you are now entering a fanboy-free zone.
Hello and welcome to the first of ESCtips Preview Podcast for this year's Eurovision. We have two very special guests, familiar guests, but their first time speaking together on the same podcast. So without too many introductions, we will welcome Rob Furber from Entertainment Odds. How are you, Rob?
Hi Gav, I'm very well, thanks.
Good to have you here. And you were at Amsterdam at the weekend. How did you find that?
Yeah, it's always informative to go to that event. Obviously very different, standing there in a gig crowd compared to, when we get to Stockholm and we see how the songs are sounding coming through the TV monitor.
Yeah, definitely agree there. And next up we have Tobias, regular on the Melody Festival and podcasts, and also joins in usually on our final podcast for Eurovision. He's here today to talk about the first half of semi-final one. How are you, Tobias?
I'm just fine, and I'm happy to get to be able to share my views on Finland's entry, of course. That's always a pleasure. Well, not always. Honestly speaking, it's not always a pleasure. But this year, I think it's quite nice.
Okay. We invited Tobias along because we felt just to add balance to the argument, we needed a pro-Finland person. Shall we get on with today's events?
Yeah, let's do it.
So, running order, which was released rather late, which is why we're delayed in doing our first podcast this year. So the first half of semi-final one in running order goes Finland, Greece, Moldova, Hungary, Croatia, Netherlands, Armenia, San Marino and Russia. So first up, we have Sanja for Finland performing Sing It Away. Tobias, will Sanja be singing her way into the final, do you think?
Finland is always borderline, that you must remember. I mean, we are this kind of offbeat Eurovision country. Our tastes are not necessarily very mainstream if you compare to the rest of Europe and the rest of the continent. We always do our best. Let's put it that way. And I think that this year, if you look at the predictions that other Eurovision fans have made, they tend to keep Finland down quite a lot. But I must say, I can't help thinking that this has a connection to what people were expecting in the national final. They had other favorites for other reasons. They for one reason or another, they favored other songs in the national final, and then they never really gave Sanja a listen. I think that in this semi-final, the Finnish entry is pretty different. It stands out. It has a very different energy from most of the other entries that are usually very slick and very sort of tailor-made for radio, very sort of super produced. And this has a more raw feeling to it, especially the live performance. I think that is what lifts Finland up. If you just look at the video clip, it doesn't, it's not very convincing. But I think the live performance with a better camera work than in the Finnish final, I think this one can feel very special and that it can stand out from the lot, actually. So I think there are good chances that Finland will be in the final.
I think the one good thing about Finland is that Sanja does perform it very strongly. I think she's better than the actual song. But I think what we have is probably a 90s house song, kind of like Ride on Time. It's well performed, but I'm not sure whether it has the USP. Rob, will Sanja be singing her way to an early flight home?
Yeah, I don't want to upset Tobias's feelings here because I'm probably a little bit negative on Finland's qualification chance. The first thing about this song was that the chorus it sounded so familiar to me. It was actually driving me crazy for a while, trying to unearth the song that it reminds me of. I think it's Clean Bandits Rather Be, featuring Jess Glynn. So to that extent, it might be deemed a modern song, but the overall impression I get is that it's actually quite dated. It takes me back further in time. I mean, you, Gav, mentioned Ride on Time. For me, it's reminiscent of something M people might have served up, circa whatever it was, 1993. Watching the live Finnish national final, Sandra did perform it well, I thought, but her backing singers sort of brought the performance down a little bit, I felt. I think the main issue with it is it just sounds very generic to me. And coming at the start of this semi, I'm not sure it's got enough about it to differentiate itself and find its way onto the qualifier list.
Yeah, I think that will be the uphill struggle for Finland. There's a few allies to help it along, but I think coming first with those other upbeat songs, don't forget we've got Moldova and Russia in this half for upbeat, and then we've got Malta right at the back end of the second half for upbeat. So it's a hell of a struggle to stand out against those other three songs.
It always is for Finland. That's the thing. That's our challenge, We're never in the final until we're in the final, so to speak. We can never rely on people liking our songs or not. It's always a surprise to us. But yeah, challenge accepted.
Brilliant. I think we've exhausted Finland now. So let's move on to Greece. Now, Argo are going to be singing Utopian Land, and that's in slot 2. Rob, do Greece have enough support to save them?
Yeah, it's a really interesting one, isn't it? I think Greece is definitely pushing its luck here with its 100% semi-final qualifying record.
Yeah.
I do like the fact it's gone, sort of fully ethno with this song this year. And I suppose in that respect, it's got a mini battle going on with Bosnia and Herzegovina in this semi, which is attempting a similar sort of thing. I really like the sound of the string instrument used in this, which I read on Eurovision.tv. It's called a pontian. There's a great moment about 20 seconds in that is reminiscent to me of Alexander Rybak's Fairy Tale.
Mm.
And I think that's when the pontian sort of combines with the drum beat. But I think that's probably the high point of the song, and I think it falls away a bit after that. I'm looking forward to seeing how it's staged, though, because knowing Greece, I think they could do a really good job with this. And to be honest, they'll probably need to give it a qualifying chance. I think it is imperative that it lands some big televoting points among its friends in the semi-final, because it's a song that I don't think is going to travel very well outside of the Greek diaspora.
True.
And I imagine the response among many Western European viewers will be, sort of, what the hell is this?
Yeah. And when the diaspora isn't there, we've known more recently that, even last year, Greece were 9th on the televote in last year's semi.
Yeah.
So it's surely expected, given they've got less allies in this semi, that they're going to score lower. And I don't think the juries are going to rank it too highly either. I don't think it's a totally offensive song, but Greece will benefit better under the new televoting under the new scoring rules.
Yeah.
I think the juries would have certainly made it a non-qualifier last year, but slot 2 proves, if anything, that SVT doesn't want this anywhere near the final, and they're really going to try and push it out. Tobias, would you let Argo take you to their utopian land?
Well, what should I say? The word underwhelming comes to mind. The big problem with this one for me is that the chorus is such a letdown. This package would possibly work if it had a sort of explosive chorus that would sort of invite you in, but it's so half-hearted. That rhyme, to rhyme fun and sun. It's like, what are you doing? I think this is Greece's worst entry for many years. If this one qualifies, it will be a huge surprise and a negative surprise for me, because that shows. I think that we've been going away from the diaspora thingy, that countries that have large amounts of people living abroad automatically gets into the final. And I think this would be a step back if this one made it. I think it's Greece's turn to sit out a year.
Well said. So we will move on to Moldova and Lydia Isaac's Falling Stars. Tobias, has Lydia's star already burnt out?
Well, I'm not a fan, to put it like that. I think this is it's not her fault. I think Lydia is really nice. She's performing. I mean, she's doing the best you can with this kind of song. But this is a very formulaic kind of. It feels like the Melodifestivalen reject that it probably is.
Yeah.
You know, one of the songs in Melodifestivalen this year was disqualified because it had already been in a Moldovan semi-final, and this feels like the other way around. Now Sweden is sort of giving back again, shipping their rejects out to Moldova. I think it's a shame. Moldova has shown through the years that they are capable of so fantastic things when they do stuff themselves.
Yeah.
When they stick to their own composers and their own people, then they have made little masterpieces through the years. This is just bleak. I can't see who is going to vote for this, really. It's a non-song.
Yeah, I don't think she sells it very well. I don't find her very telegenic, but the dance song itself, I think it's another, coming in slot 3, I think it's another one that potentially causes problems for Finland, as I've already pointed out. But there are literally hundreds of these generic dance songs submitted every single year that fail to make the grade, and unfortunately this one has snuck through. It's quite a tired genre, and the juries and televoters will unite, I think, and ensure it doesn't pollute the final. What about you, Rob? Has Moldova's dance cheese gone mouldy?
I think it has, Gav. Yeah, I'm pretty much in agreement with you guys. You know what's happened to Moldova. I love those Pasha Parfene songs of yesteryear. I mean, the rule Pasha Parfene didn't even win the Moldovan national final, but I encourage anyone to look that up on YouTube. That's a fantastic tune. Zob de Zub, which I think won that year. You know, that was great fun, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I loved that. I really enjoyed that. But yeah, I mean, this is, I suppose it's a bit like Finland for me in the sense that it sounds overly familiar and maybe, you know, not in a good way. It just does have this very generic dance beat. Lydia's live vocal, I think, you know, Gav and I saw in Amsterdam and heard in Amsterdam, you know, it's probably not the best. And it's just hard to see what enables this to stand out. So really, I think this is the third poor year in a row for Moldova. And, you know, unless they pull a rabbit out of the hat in Stockholm in terms of incredible staging, I think it faces a similar fate to the last two entries.
Yeah, in fairness, given the staging last year, they're going to have to go some to beat that, and you know that didn't qualify last year. So
yeah,
and I went a full 180 on that song. I ended up really liking it, having hated it in the national final. Moving on to song 4, which is Hungry, and Freddie will be singing Pioneer. Rob, does Freddie make you hungry for more?
Not really, no. I think one of the problems I have with this is Freddie's rather mumbled diction when he sings. I enjoy the chorus. I think that helps to elevate the song. But I don't think Freddie is the strongest solo vocalist in this semi-final. I was looking back, and you know, Hungary has qualified for the final in the last 5 consecutive years. But at this stage, you know, before we get to Stockholm, I think this shapes up as a borderline qualifier at best, and probably far more likely to maybe sneak through around, you know, sort of 8th to 10th, probably a bit like Boggy last year.
Yeah.
You know, rather than sort of, you know, be more like Andrus Calais Saunders, who I think he was 3rd, wasn't he, back in 2014? Yeah.
Yeah, I largely agree, actually. I think it's kind of compact disco Mark II. And interestingly, in 2012, they finished 10th in their semi from slot 15. I think from slot 4, potentially, that's a big red flag for Hungary this year. a lot of people that comment say, "Oh, you're really underrating Hungary. He's got an excellent vocal." And like you, Rob, I don't think he has got an excellent vocal. I think he's got a very gravelly voice, but I find him very shouty. I also find him pitchy. And that kind of graveliness, it's like kind of Czech Republic's Valklav from last year. And I found him quite jarring. But I think the song is quite mediocre. I don't think there's a kind of hook that really jumps out to you. And I think looking at what follows it, you've got Netherlands later in the running order, followed by Russia. Then you've got Cyprus in 11th, a good rock band. I don't think he's got a strong enough USP to really score well on the televote. So I think televoters will be ranking it outside the top 10. And I also think the jury's maybe around kind of 8th, 9th, 10th, perhaps. So I think it is touch and go. And I think maybe 11th or 12th, just missing out. I have certainly taken it on in the betting markets. I think it's worth it. What about you, Tobias? Do Hungary have the appetite for success this year?
Well, here comes the Ugric rescue squad. I will talk this up now. This thing about his diction. Yes, I've been thinking about that as well. But that's mainly a problem for the people who has English as their mother tongue. The rest of us won't care. Most of us won't notice. It's not a problem, really. I think this is quite a hooky little number. I didn't like it at first because I found the lyrics a little bit off-putting and a little bit like I've had it with these message songs. It's like don't inflict them on me anymore. But I think Freddie is charming. I like seeing him on my screen, and not just for the obvious superficial reasons. But I think he's likable. I think, and I quite like the staging. It's a little bit, pompous and stupid in a good way with this drummer. And
it was a bit Ryan Dolan. Also a bit dark, I thought. So that was also a negative for me.
I can sort of like that. That can appeal to me. But then again, I live in Finland where we have 8 months of winter. So I mean, maybe that enters into it. I think Freddie is definitely in the final. Maybe not by a huge margin, but I'm sure he's going to make it. I think he will appeal to a certain segment of the audience that are very likely to vote for him.
Okay, so on opposite pages there. So next we go over to Croatia and Nina Kraljic with Lighthouse. Tobias, back to you. Will Nina light up Europe?
Many people will like this. Many people do like this. I've noticed. But then I find she is in with a big problem, and it is that she has a very nice song. And I usually say that nice is the worst thing you could be at Eurovision. Nobody's voting for nice. She's far too early in the running, and she's far too nice. She has this kind of radio-friendly, reminiscent of perhaps, I don't know, now I lost the name of them, Zombie. What were their names?
Yeah, the Cranberries.
The Cranberries, thank you very much. This old mine is crumbling. The Cranberries mixed with, now I'm losing all my
Dido?
References here, but those who did C'est la vie in the 90s.
Oh, you've got us now.
Happy Irish group who made a song called...
Oh, yes. Yes, I know.
Them.
Okay.
It feels something like that, but in the form of a ballad. And I feel that this is possibly a bit too polite, and her live performances have suggested that maybe she isn't quite the personality that this kind of song would need. I'm afraid Croatia is looking at an early exit this year, despite me liking the song.
Yeah, I thought it came as kind of welcome relief when it was first released, because we'd had this slew of poor, mediocre songs, and then all of a sudden this bright spark was dropped on us, and the market overreacted, and she was matched as low as like 9-1 on Betfair, and now look at her, she's nearly out to 70-1. So the market has kind of woken up to what is quite an anonymous song that needs a big old key change to to even make you recognise it and remember it. But I kind of found myself in Amsterdam this weekend watching her, last weekend, and the key change totally passed me by. But I think you are right about Croatia having a real struggle here in that they've only qualified once since the return of the juries. And I don't find that Nina is particularly votable. I think she struggles to emote the song. And I just kind of get this picture, if she takes this blue hair to Stockholm and this I don't know, this kind of Dracula's bride dress that she was wearing in Amsterdam, I don't think that televoters will quite get the concept, and I don't think they'll warm to her. But there could be enough jury support for qualification, and I think if they do make it, it's 8th to 10th. But you'd have probably expected more help from SVT if they wanted her anywhere near the final. I'm not sure. It's just a bit 50-50. Certainly not sure on that one. What about you, Rob? Lighthouse or Outhouse?
Yeah, I mean, like you guys, I do have some reservations about this, and also like Tobias. The first time I heard this, I thought Dolores O'Riordan, Cranberries lead singer. I think Nina's got a lovely soft lilt to her voice. Obviously Gav and I saw her perform live in Amsterdam, and I think she was fine vocally. But yeah, where this ballad might fall down is that it's just, I keep using this word, generic. And I think, she does have work to do in terms of how she delivers this song and how she engages the viewer. I think there's a bit of a disconnect at the moment between how she looks and how the song sounds. And yeah, like you were saying, Gav, this sort of punky look of hers, it definitely needs to be softened, because it's a very dreamy sounding ballad, and I think the visuals need to match that.
Yeah, definitely agree. So yeah, we're not really sure on Croatia, other than we're a little bit worried. But we're going to wait until we get to Stockholm by the looks of it and see what staging they've come up with. However, I have heard rumours that HRT are somewhat undecided on what they need to do. And I think she is just going to be standing alone, maybe with one or two backing singers. Next up, we have the Netherlands, Douw Bob with Slow Down. I've got a feeling Rob's going to like this song, so over to you.
Yeah, I mean, obviously people are making a lot of comparisons with the Common Linnets back in 2014, which I really liked, and obviously, did tremendously well. Like Calm After the Storm 2 years ago, I think this obviously stands alone this year as the only country folk song. One thing that the Common Linnets had in their favour, which Douw Bob doesn't, is that they were a male-female duet. Yeah. And, they were able to build that brilliant staging around, that chemistry between the two of them. Yeah. He's got to sell this a bit more on his own. Obviously, we'll have his band with him on stage, which, and we saw that in Amsterdam at the weekend. And I expect it to be, really well performed. But I think as a song, Slow Down maybe lacks the nuance of Calm After the Storm. But it's still very harmonious to me. I think it's easily accessible.
It's got a very nice warm feeling, and even though the slow down hook is very repetitive, it really does sink in.
And it's probably unique enough to stand out. And I also think it's the sort of track that could be appreciated by jurors.
Definitely, I do agree with that. Just one thing on Douw is that he's very, very telegenic, and I think he oozes charisma. I wrote in my Amsterdam review that it was like some kind of New York gangster in the way that he was addressing the crowd. He was so confident. If they just show an ounce of that, if they allow him to, then it could be another good year for the Netherlands. They do have the same staging guy lined up. We call him Pancake. The Dutch obviously have a different name for him, but he did the Common Linnet staging. He also did last year's staging, so it just depends whether he comes with a Common Linnets type staging concept or whether it comes with another disaster. like last year. We don't know. But over to you, Tobias. Would you ever tell Doe to slow down?
Well, I'd like for him to sort of, um, if it's not slow down, I want to tell him key change or something. The only problem with this song for me, I like this one very much, is that it gets a bit static. It doesn't have, there's not a lot of things going on in it. It's like after 60 seconds you've heard it, which is basically the same problem that the Netherlands had last year, that you hear the first minute and it's really good and it's really nice, and then nothing happens, and then it's the question, will they be able to keep up our interest, or will they lose us before 3 minutes have passed? I think he will manage to keep our interest up. He's a good performer. I can also feel his presence in a good way. I think this is good enough, and I think it's original enough in this semi to stand out enough to make it to 10th place at least. I think he will be in the final. But I just must add, I can't believe that the same person crafted the 2014 and the 2015 Dutch performances. It's like, what happened? Who thought the veil was a good idea?
Yeah.
As long as they keep all the veils off him and all that kind of nonsense, then I think he definitely has a good chance of qualifying, I think.
Yeah, I think the problem with last year's staging is that there wasn't really a mood that he could really craft with the staging, whereas at least with 2014 there was. We're going to travel over to Armenia now, and we've got Iveta with Love Wave. Tobias, how much do you love Iveta's song?
I love her production.
Yes.
I love the production here. That kind of that thing that comes before the first chorus that sounds like the apocalypse. It reminds me of the Beatles, A Day in the Life, with a huge glissando. Check it up, kids. And I love it. And then the chorus comes crashing down, and I don't really feel it anymore. I think it's very neatly produced. It's very nice. I understand what they're trying to do, but I just don't feel it. Maybe this one will come alive on stage in a convincing way. But as it is, I feel that it'd be something that it doesn't really manage to be all that things that it has the ambition to be. I like her, and I like the way that they're not afraid to be difficult. I mean, their ethno touch is the final kiss of death to Greece.
Yeah.
I mean, if you thought the ethno stuff sounded okay in Greece, it sounds excellent here. I mean, just forget about Greece. So if Armenia has one purpose this year, it's to stop Greece from qualifying. Of course they will qualify. It's not a question. It's just me and this song have not clicked yet.
Yeah, I do agree. When I first heard it, I really liked the melody. I like the drama in it, and it does suggest that they're going to have dramatic staging in Stockholm. The one problem I do have is, excuse me, is that the song structure and vocal grunting and screeching is just a bit off-putting, and that dominant shouty females don't tend to do well in Eurovision. And I think another slight negative is that the Eastern Bloc is quite strong this year, and I don't see Armenia scoring top marks from any of their own region, which I think is a major negative. What about you, Rob? Would you give Iveta a love wave?
I definitely would, Gav. Yeah. I was surprised that this got, quite a lukewarm reception from a lot of ESC fans when it was first released, because I really liked it. And I think it's a breath of fresh air in a very, dare I say it, generic year. I like the fact it's different, and it's trying to be creative. I like the spoken word intro. I like the way it builds to the initial crescendo. I think that's really good. And I especially like the ethno sound that is used throughout. Again, I've been reading up on this. I think it's called the zurna, that instrument that's used. I did wonder how well Iveta would cope singing it live, because it struck me as quite a demanding song.
Yeah.
But based on that Moscow performance the other week, I thought she sounded fine. And it, like you guys are saying, it does seem to be a song made for a compelling stage show. I guess the big question is whether Armenia can do it justice. But I think, Iveta can play her part, but she ideally needs some great lighting and, choreography going on around her, and maybe even that Zerna player joining her on stage. I just hope they manage to pull it off, because I think it's one of this year's more interesting and original songs.
Yeah, I think if it's going to work, they need to make her appear more sympathetic and less aggressive. I think if they really focus on her when she's screeching, I think that would be a massive red flag for me. Anything else to add on Armenia?
Yeah, I don't think it's not a contender for victory, because it's a little bit too introvert and a little bit too pretentious, perhaps. But I love the fact that someone is doing something like this and brings in elements that are not obviously there to please everyone. Yes. I think that's a big positive, and therefore I hope that they will do well.
Now we're off to San Marino to see Sahat with his song I Didn't Know. Rob, have you packed your Saturday Night Fever suit yet?
I do love the disco version of this. But actually, I think San Marino missed a trick by not really, going to town, pimping it up a bit more with the bigger disco beat, and then sort of requesting that Serhat, plays on his role as this kind of absurd aging Lothario, and then really turning it into a proper novelty tune. I don't think this goes far enough into that sort of territory.
Yeah.
I think he could still, really ham it up massively on stage in Stockholm, and I hope he does, if only for my own entertainment. And I think if he does, that would potentially boost San Marino's televote. But I imagine jurors are just going to kill this.
Well, we know San Marino boost their own vote through other means anyway. But I love it in recorded form, and I know it's probably going to be awful live. But it's the rehearsal I'm most looking forward to. I absolutely adore it. Whenever it comes on a Spotify playlist, it's the one that kind of really gets my foot tapping in this semi-final. So I think it's going to be a lot of people's guilty pleasure. The UK will love it, so unfortunately they're unable to vote in this semi. Tobias, is this the greatest ever song from San Marino?
Well, what can I say?
It's a very low bar, I do know.
I actually used to like quite a few San Marinese entries, come to think of it. It was actually 2 before Ralph Siegel came in and had his sort of hostile takeover, and then since then San Marino hasn't really been a lot. No, really. I like the first version of this, that sleazy crooner kind of version, where he's a lone Bond villain in solitude, locked away somewhere, possibly singing a love song directed to himself. I love that idea. I thought that was really... The disco version is, it's wonderful in its own way. It's endearingly rubbish, and it's so serious. That's the thing. The reason they haven't pimped it up is because they are 100% serious. This is not a joke. I feel that they have done the disco version because they feel that they managed to enhance their song somehow. I can see a board meeting at San Marinese television where they think, yes, I think these are the measures we need to take, and then everyone will love us. I think everyone will love this for all the wrong reasons, but it's wonderful. I think this is a potential shock qualifier. Because, first of all, it's the first time in years that the Turks have a Turkish singer to vote for. And you never know, sometimes endearingly rubbish songs just break through to people. They sit at home and they feel like, oh, the poor man with his hat.
Well, this is the UK mentality.
Everything. And then they vote for him just, to cheer him up. And when all of Europe does this at the same time, he will obviously go through to the final. A part of me would love that.
So you're saying he's almost like the Russian grandmas in one elderly gentleman?
A little bit like that, something like that. Yes, I would. If San Marino makes it to the final this year, it is the ultimate proof that everything is still possible in this contest. Even though we analyze everything to bits and and we think we know so many things. If San Marino makes it to the final, it's proof we know nothing, and I would love that. So thumbs up for San Marino. I'm not sure it's going to happen, but I hope it will happen.
So effectively, it's San Marino's mission to save the Eurovision Song Contest this year.
Well, from being too predictable anyway.
Brilliant. So now we go on to a potential winner. Of course, if Sahat doesn't win it, we have Sergey Lazarev. You are the only one. Tobias, is Sergey the only one for you?
No, he's definitely not. Well, he's a great singer. He's a fantastic pop star. The thing is that I've listened quite a lot to his stuff, and I'm a little bit disappointed that they went all Eurovision for Eurovision.
Yeah.
Most of his songs are much more edgy and much more interesting and much more current. My problem with this song is that it sounds like a Eurovision winner 6 years ago. I mean, it would have done, had it been in 2008, it would have been the Shady Lady. It would have been the one we obviously thought would win. And I'm afraid that it's one thing to feel dated when you're in another genre, but if you are under the pretense of being current, you can't sound like the trends that were on 4 years ago. It won't do. And I have a feeling that they're going to overstage this. I would like them to stay focus on Sergey, his great presence, his great radiation, the strong chorus. But I think they're going to over-egg this pudding in the most violent way. And I think that's the big problem here. If they would sort of, try to think less is more, then I think it would work better. It's a qualifier, obviously.
So you think it's going to be a curdled mess?
I'm afraid it will be, yes, because it's always this problem when they have endless resources but no taste. Then they keep doing these things. They keep throwing too many things into the mix, and I would want a clean and crisp performance of this, and I'm not going to have it. But I can't see Russia doing worse than fourth or something this year.
Yeah.
I mean, it's definitely up there. It would be ridiculous if it wouldn't be.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. It is very dated. With Focus on board, we know that we're going to get great staging. I suppose the challenge for them is that in the year after Mons, where Mons stood out a mile amongst the rest of the songs, and with other countries bringing similar staging concepts to Stockholm, will he stand out quite as much? That, I guess, is the challenge, and I guess we'll find out next month. But there actually hasn't been a song like this in the jury top 5 ever. Sakis, which is probably the closest song, was 11th in 2009. Eric Saade was 9th. So I don't think the juries are going to warm to this type of song if they stick to their previous form. And I do think the juries will stick to their previous form. I don't think it's going to finish in the top 5 unless they totally nail the staging and the juries are somehow marking the visual side of things over the actual.
But then can I just add that then also, I mean, I was really trying to leave this aspect out, but we all also know for sure that the juries of some countries are going to deliberately keep Russia down.
Yes, the Baltics will. Yeah.
Many of the Western TV companies would not want Russia to host this contest. I think there will be a fair share of juries that will actually deliberately keep Russia down.
Yeah, but then we're looking outside the top 5, probably about 6th to 10th, I would say, depending on how horrific the staging is. But then televote wise, I think we are certainly looking top 4. So I wouldn't call it a winner. I think it's far too short in the market. Incidentally, I've written about it at great length. I do think the price is being kept artificially short. There is a history of some nations using bots, as we call them, to keep the prices short, and I think Russia have been doing it this year. Rob, what do you think? Are Russia the only ones to beat?
No, I mean I share you guys' reservations on this. I have to say I've been impressed with what I've heard from Sergey during live concert appearances. Like you were saying, I think he's a really good pop star, and he's got a very solid live vocal.
Yeah.
The song itself is, it's undeniably catchy. I find myself enjoying it, and I expect the staging to be slick and impressive in Stockholm. Another concern for me is that I think it might be seen as a bit derivative in copying Mans last year if they go to town with, the visual effects on stage, which I think they may well do. Obviously, a big televoting points haul looks guaranteed. But yeah, again, like you guys were saying, when you look at this year's competition, the question has to be where this will land on the jury side of the equation. That's where it could fall down, as there is this argument that, it's a bit of a dated Eurovision sound, but maybe a great stage show will reel in enough jurors for Russia to pull an Azerbaijan 2011 and win despite not topping the jury vote.
Yeah.
I respect Russia's chance. I do think it's a worthy favourite, but certainly if the staging doesn't impress in Stockholm, I'd expect the price to drift from, what is it today? I think it's trading at about 3.
It's about 3s, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would expect it to be back to pre-release kind of levels, like about 7s or 8s. And if we do end up with a seesaw type gimmick, which didn't work particularly well, then even lower, I would say. That pretty much brings us to the end of the first half of semi-final 1. Anything else to add in? Any quick notes that you may have left out on another song?
Well, I'd just like to say that I actually think that this is quite a strong year compared to last year, which I think is disastrous, really, song-wise. There were maybe 10 songs I still care for out of that lineup. I think this is a strong year, but I think it's a difficult year since so many countries have entered songs that feel somewhat similar, that there's so many songs in this mid-tempo, radio-friendly pop genre that they will have to fight so hard for the same points. So I think that to try to predict the outcome of the semi-finals, you will need to think outside the box a little bit. It's not enough to be a good song. Like, are you a strong enough song in the genre you're in? It's like, how is the internal competition? So I think we will stand there with quite a few surprises when we open the envelopes in the first semi-final.
Yeah, possibly.
I hope so.
I would probably disagree in terms of it being a strong Eurovision. I think it's a very competitive Eurovision, but I don't think we have quite reached the heights of last year where, we had Mons, we had Ivolo, we had a very strong Russia. We also had Belgium, we had Latvia, really good songs. And yet this year, I don't think we've quite got that wow factor. I don't think anyone has quite delivered a kind of a spine-tingling moment. Maybe that will change when we get to Stockholm. What about you, Rob?
Yeah, I totally agree with you there, Gav. I do think it's a lot more open than the betting market suggests. I think there are huge doubts over Russia, and then you look at France, and there are doubts regarding that, and it sort of continues that way. That's the difficulty. It's like all the songs seem to have their flaws.
Yeah.
I think more than ever, it's just going to come down to who amazes us in Stockholm. I think that's going to change things dramatically again in terms of the odds. When we get to see all the rehearsals.
Yeah, definitely. I actually can't wait to get to Stockholm now and get to first rehearsals, if not only to see Sahat, but to see how the other the songs are transformed on stage.
Yeah.
So that brings us to the end of first half of semi-final 1. We will be back next week with the second half of semi-final 1. But no, until then, I'd like to thank Tobias.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, always welcome. And Rob from Entertainment Odds.
Thanks very much for having me on again, Gav.
No problem at all. And until next week, goodbye.
ESCtips.com will return with another show soon. In the meantime, show us some love by following us and sharing this podcast with your Facebook and Twitter friends.